Okay, so next up, we've got, this is going to be really critical for you guys to pay attention. We've got 15 minutes with Brad Hoke. Brad is the co-founder of CapDex, a boutique advisory firm focused on helping entrepreneurs become more effective in fundraising process through developing a powerful pitch deck and developing their stories. He's going to go through us quickly what they do to help companies do that, and in turn going to help you prepare for tomorrow and for other things. And so excited to have Brad with us. CapDex, Brad has been exposed to hundreds of pitch decks companies. This is what they focus on. Can we give the big man a big round of applause and get him ready here?
Okay, thanks John for that intro, and that is a wealth of knowledge. I've heard of a lot of it before and a lot of meat and potatoes. So just like John's deck, I'm happy to share our deck, happy to answer any questions. I'll leave you with my contact information as well. In the introduction, I'm a co-founder of CapDex. What we do as a boutique kind of consulting firm is we meet with startup companies a lot in the seed stage all the way up to, now we've done up to the C stage of financing, to really meet with the entrepreneur and help them put together a cohesive deck that really tells the story of their company and does so in a beautiful way with good graphics and help you find the right content. And so today what I want to talk about goes through that process a little bit at a high level, and we'll take some questions if we have time towards the end. So the first thing I want to say is it depends, right? So some of you are looking for probably A round financing, some of you are at seed round, some are kind of in the middle. So how you approach and pitch a venture capital firm will be totally different. A seed round will have different decks, different metrics. Your CFO will be forecasting a lot more than when you have your A round and you're really starting to nail down your metrics and moving forward there. As you know, there's different ways to get intros into a venture capital firm, and that will depend on, that will be a precursor to how your deck and how your presentation will go. So we all know a warm intro is best. If John Richards sends you over to the guys at Kickstart, they're much more likely to have you in the office and sit down and talk to you than if you pick up the phone and just call them. Most VC firms will pick up the phone and talk to you or set up a meeting, but it might be more over the phone, 20 minutes, and that's about it. So the two things I want to talk about today to set up our deck is the one thing you need to have is a killer pitch deck, and then you need to have a killer strategy. And that really goes into what goes into the deck and then how you present the deck. The reason is, and John set this up perfectly for me, is this is what the metrics look like right across the industry. Is if 100 companies walk into a VC firm, let's say Pelion in Utah, 80 of them will only get a first meeting. 20 of those will then move on to the due diligence process, which is the VC firm will actually start doing work, going out of their way to do due diligence on you. Try to find out your background, go through those slides, really try to pull out the knowledge and information for that. And so what we do at CapDex is we really try to help individuals move from that 80% pile to that 20% pile. Now, once you're in that 20% pile, it's about your company, it's about you and what you have done. There's no more help there, but great deck and a great visualization and a great storytelling mechanism and a cohesive deck is the way we do that. So let's go through it a little bit. There's two ways to look at it, is what goes in the deck and then how you present the deck. So if any of us did a Google search right now, we'd probably get a lot of articles that come up with these terms. You would search for, what do I put in a venture capital deck? How do I present to venture capitalists? What terms do I need to know, or what metrics do I need to show? And you'll get something that looks like this. And there's three big mistakes that happen once you first see these terms. The first mistake is they'll just go through and answer the questions. They'll look at each of them like it's a question. What is the problem? They'll write the answer out and just present it in that way. And in that way, it's much more of a Q&A type presentation with a VC firm than a conversation, and you want it to be a conversation. The second part is they weight these individual pieces the same. They will look at your go-to-market strategy and put just as much time in that as they would their financial statements or in their team slide or whatever the case. And that's another huge mistake. Not all of these are weighted the same. And the third mistake is entrepreneurs like to tell it in a linear fashion. They like to just go down a checklist and just knock off boxes and say, okay, well, this is our problem, this is our solution, here's our market size, and just go through and just dump information. Now, most of you probably had a professor in high school or college that did this, right? They just dump information. And we know as human beings, we don't learn that way. We do not learn by info dumping. Most of us took a test and then dumped it afterwards. How we learn and how I liked my favorite professors were storytellers. You have to be a storyteller when you're talking about your company. There are many elements within that story, and we know from that list that not all are weighted the same. And so to be a really good storyteller, you need to understand first yourself and then how to tell a story. You need to understand what elements of that story need to stand out and which ones need to go in the back. And so at CapDex, we put a list together of what are the 5 key pieces we think each deck needs to talk about the most. We call those our core pieces, and then we have our secondary pieces as well. And those secondary pieces might not be as important, depending on the rounds you're looking at, of course. Your seed round, your financial forecast might not matter as much as your A round and B round, depending on the metrics. So let's go through those now really quickly and talk about it. We think of it as a circular thought process or a storytelling process, that you want to build a circular foundation here so that as you stack the pieces, they all go very smoothly. The first piece, and one of the biggest, is the problem. What problem are you trying to address? How big is this problem? Who now has this problem, and why would they pay to fix this problem? What is it in the market now? How is it done now? What's the look of it now? The second piece, which goes right on top of that, is then the solution. And part of that solution is your product. What is your solution? How much better is your solution than what's on the market now? You'll hear a lot of venture capital firms say they want to see a solution that's 10x better than the current solution on the market. How they quantify that, I've still never been able to figure out fully, whether it's 10x or 20x or 100x, but they want a solution that is that much better, that much quicker, faster, more consumer friendly, whatever the process might be. So you need to have those be cohesive. I cannot tell you how many decks I've seen people come in and they lay out this huge problem that is vexing the whole world. And then they offer a solution that only talks about part of that problem and doesn't address that whole problem or doesn't address everything that needs to be talked about there. So really make sure your solution matches up with your problem and they go hand in hand. The third part is the market. Your market sizing is a big deal. So how you size the market, there's many different ways to do so. You can purchase a market sizing tool. You can go through Forrester or other websites that can help you size a market. You can do what is done, a top-down or a bottoms-up model. There's many different ways to do this, and I know me and John are probably throwing out terms some of you understand and some of you don't. So always feel free to ask questions, and we can look it up later to find out. But you want that market size to be at least $1 billion. The reason is that venture firms really want to hit home runs, and they want to get that 100x. And without getting the 100x, there'll be 5x and 3x returns, but if they want the 100x, they need to have $1 billion so that once you hit scale, you can grow fast and really acquire revenue. The fourth part is your team. I've seen many different team slides, and a lot of them give really deep biographies, or they will tell us things that don't matter or do not pertain to your actual company. If you've got an art degree in college and you're doing a cybersecurity startup, we might not need to know that. We need to know, what have you done in your background that leads you to this point? Why are you and your team the ones that can figure it out this time? What is it about you and the expertise you have that will help grow this? Why are you committed? How much have you put in your own time, your own money? What is it that you have done to make it right for you at this time? And the last part is traction. Now, for the earlier stage companies, traction is not necessarily always financials. Traction can be, we hired a big executive away from a company and brought them in. We have beta customers. We launched on the App Store our beta product. Traction can be more than financials, but traction can make or break a meeting you have. I've seen meetings where venture capital firms, the partners are sitting back and not very interested because they don't fully understand the problem and the solution you're talking about. But if a traction slide comes up that shows true traction, their eyes light up because the market knows what you're talking about. And so the traction slide is then what we think is the fifth and last kind of core element to your slide. Or to your slide deck. We think those 5, we call them core because they don't really change too much. Yes, you can get more traction, but your team is going to pretty much be the same. The market's going to be the same. Your problem is going to be the same, whether it's your A round, B round, C round. Your solution will change a little bit as you build the product. However, these things are pretty stable. They will be there no matter what. So these need more time and more development as you go to pitch. Then there are a slew of what we call secondary factors or secondary things that you need to talk about. We look at these as risk factors. Most venture capital firms will look down, and while your go-to-market strategy might be developed now, let's say for instance, we're going to pick 4 verticals, industry verticals, we're going to pick financial services and insurance, and we have our top 20 customers on each, and we have our sales guys out pounding it, right? That's a great go-to-market strategy, but that can change as soon as the product changes, right? And so these, you might not need to do as much diligence on it. And I put financials here because I thought most of it was early stage. Most of your financials will be a guesstimate, especially as your pricing changes and as your forecast changes. Those who are in later rounds, of course, your financials then become a bigger piece. But these are risk factors. No venture capital firm will tell you they have taken all the risk out of the process. What they're trying to do is become comfortable with the risk. They accept the risk and they become comfortable, and that is now something they're okay in investing in. It's not just is we're okay with risk or we're not. No, we're getting comfortable with a lot of these risks. And your partners, your intellectual property, your unit economics, all are ways that you can talk about that in a way that is not necessarily key to your presentation or to the story, but that can change over time. So that's why we call those the secondary. So that's what goes into it. Now let's talk about how we talk about it. A lot of questions I get after this slide or when we're talking to clients is, Brad, what order would you put these in? And once again, it depends, right? It depends on your story. It depends on what matters the most to you and your company. Is your team your headline? Do you have a killer team? Is your financials your headline? You really got good cash flow or really traction? That all depends. And of course, you'll have to figure a lot of that out, or you can work with mentors or others to help figure that out. But if you had to hold my feet to the fire, this would be kind of a generic order of a good storytelling process, right? Of course, we're going to have our cover slide. You're going to tell us about your vision. Why do you exist? Why do you do what you do every day? What is the problem? How are you going to solve it? What is your product? How does your product work? This would be a great spot to throw in a little demo. I'm not talking about a full-fledged demo, but hey, pull up some screenshots, pull up your website, shows your user interface, do something to make it more tangible for the VC firm. So as they look at the rest of the presentation, they have something to think back on. Then again, your business model, market opportunity. But this is a pretty good order, I think. But that, once again, this is very generic, and it depends on your story and how you're going to tell that story. The next process is, a lot of people will tell you you need to have your elevator pitch, your 30-second pitch, or your 5-minute pitch, which I have 5 minutes left. They'll tell you about those different things. My point with this slide is you want to make sure your story feels the same no matter in what process you're telling it. If you can get your story to feel the same in a paragraph as you do a 30-minute presentation, you have the soul of your story, the soul of your company that's coming across. If it starts to sound different, you need to continue to work on it. They say the average venture capital or somebody raising venture capital will take probably 40 meetings before they get funded. If you're meeting a VC firm, you'll have your first meeting, then maybe a demo, a follow-up, then they'll go through your financials, a few more meetings and lunches. You're going to get really good at pitching. So you need to make sure you really understand your story and what you're doing. You're going to do a lot of meetings and you're going to tell a lot of stories. So you need to get really comfortable at telling your story. So you need a killer pitch deck and you need a killer strategy. And that's kind of, at CapDex, that's what we do. We hope each of you can do that. One other element we think is very important is your last few minutes as you're about to leave a venture capital firm. I think there are some questions that you can ask a VC firm that will help you understand who they are and if they're really a good fit for you. This first question is my favorite. I've done my general research on the firm, but tell me a bit more about your current fund. Kickstart is now on their 3rd fund. They're probably raising their 4th fund. That tells you they've been successful in the past. They can say, hey, we're in our third or fourth year of doling out that fund, so you know they're getting to the end of their funding cycle. They try to get all their funds out in the first 5 years and then kind of harvest in the last 5 years. So that one question can help you understand if they've been successful. If they're in their first year of a new fund, they are really trying to deploy capital. So that is somebody who should be higher up on your list. How does your firm make decisions? Do I need to talk to multiple partners? Do I need to talk to a single partner? And my favorite question, of course, is what disproportionate advantage does your firm have? Right? Every firm will tell you they've had great exits, they've worked with SaaS products, but are they great at sales? Can they really help you hire and build the best sales force out there? Can they really help you build product and put you in touch with those right people? Of course, have the right attitude. I think every pitch is a learning opportunity. Bring your notebook with you. Make sure you're taking notes. You're going to start hearing the same question over and over and over again. And if you can catch on to that and then start answering that question within your pitch, that will save more time as you learn and you grow, and you'll get more and more information and feedback. One thing that I do is I make sure we never change speakers. A lot of people have 3 co-founders and they all want to speak in a pitch, right? That sometimes changes the voice of the pitch. That sometimes changes how people are hearing, or somebody is a better speaker than the other speaker, and it kind of overshadows them, even they're doing a part that might be secondary and not primary. That's something we talk about. Of course, that's totally up to you and how you do it. But I've seen a lot, people who get up there and own the whole pitch, sometimes it goes really well, it flows better. You get a better feeling in one voice coming from that. And then just basic words of advice. The goal is not to achieve your best valuation. Your goal is to get a partner. Your goal is to find a business partner that's going to be with you for probably 5 to 7 years, who will probably come in on your seed round. They'll follow around in your A round and be on your board, and then they'll back off as other investors take the B round, the C round, and so forth. They are going to be with you for a while. Optimize your raise for partnership, not for valuation, and it will go a lot farther there. You're not trying to close on your first meeting, of course. You're trying to get to that next meeting. We want to make sure you get to that 20% pile. That's where the best entrepreneurs are. You're here, you're learning, you're trying to get better. Having a killer pitch deck, a killer strategy, knowing how to tell your story will, again, help with that. And then for a seed round, I don't think you should spend too much time on a lot of the diligence. A lot of the things are unknowns. And that's okay. We can throw out financials that are always wrong on a seed round because your price is going to change, things are going to change. You need to do it, and you need it to look good so that they understand you have the thought process, but really spend time on developing your company, doing the traction, and sticking to those 5 core elements. Here's my name, here's the email, my phone number. Feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer questions. Once again, we help build decks. We have great designers that work for us and people who've spent years in the venture capital industry to kind of help build out the right content. So we can just answer questions. We want entrepreneurs to succeed. We've seen a lot of bad decks, and we hope to see that get better.